Let's start. So my name's Laura. I'm the Operational Development Manager at FLIC. We have a few FLIC members here today. So we have Alison, my boss's boss, and she's the main boss of FLIC. And we have Bex, who's our co-production lead. So she helps us to make sure that our clients are involved in every part of what we do. And we have Katie, who is our comms lead or manager, comms manager. So she runs our website and makes us look fancier than we really are. We have Tom, who's one of our services coordinators, and he's going to talk a bit more about what he does later. If you want to have your cameras on, that would be lovely, just because I get to see that I'm not just talking at myself. And just to let you know, there's, often technical difficulties, the dog barks, doorbells go, etc., etc. So please bear with us. So today, we're just really here to talk about what we do at FLIC. We had an 8-year project, and Alison's going to start by talking about that. Katie, do you mind putting the presentation up? Thank you. So we're going to start by talking about FLIC in general. Then we are going to talk about one of our clients in particular and hear from her as to her story. Because everything that we do in FLIC comes from the client experience and what our clients are saying that they want to see in the system. Then we're going to have a time to all get together and have a chat between us and learn from each other. And then in the last part of the session, we're going to have a little bit of a show and tell from Bex and Tom. So I hope that that kind of summarizes what you were hoping to get from the session. And it sounds good. So I'm going to hand over to Alison to start us off.
Thank you. Right, first slide. Now, those people who know me will know that I tend to bang on quite a lot, so I'm going to try not to talk too much. I've got 10 minutes. So just to give you a real quick overview of everything we're doing at FLIC. So we're funded for 8 years by the National Lottery, and we've been going since 2014. And we're one of 12 areas across England. And we work in partnership with Camden and Islington boroughs. So they, in order to basically get the funding, they had to sign up to be in partnership with us. And what we're all about is looking at how the system works for people experiencing multiple disadvantage. So, and to try out new approaches to try and make things better, and to look at how we involve people with lived experience in that process, and really to change the system so it's better for everyone. So going on to the next slide. Yeah, actually, can we just skip forward to the next slide, Katie? Do you mind? Yeah, so just basically, this is our definition. Katie,
then there's people in the waiting room that I'm trying to let in, so if somebody else could do that. Bex, if you could try and do that, that'd be helpful. Okay.
Yeah, so when we say multiple disadvantage, this is basically what we mean is people with experience of homelessness, mental health issues, substance use, who really, the way things are set up at the moment, tend to fall through the gaps and have doors quite often shut in their faces. So we're set up to try and address those, and we're doing loads and loads of different things. So just going back to the slide we were on before, that multicoloured one, Katie.
That one.
That one, yeah. I'm not going to go through all of this, but basically, this is basically gives you a very brief overview of everything we're doing, and I'm going to speak through it. So we have a frontline team working directly with clients, but most importantly, what we're doing now is doing a whole load of work across these different areas. So we're doing work on mental health, housing, homelessness, working with women, physical health, loads of work going on about co-production and how to embed the client's voice in a system change, and also around peer mentoring as well. So if we skip forward to the slide after the next one, Katie. It's a bit weird because I'm not driving the slides, so. Okay, so physical health. We had to write like a 97-page business plan to get the funding, and it didn't mention physical health at all anywhere in that. And yet in our first 18 months of being operational, we had 3 of our clients all die within 6 months of each other. And across our programme, we've had 10 of our clients die and 5% of people die across the whole of the Fulfilling Lives programme in England. So the death rate, so people, men who are homeless tend to die, average age is 45. For women, it's 43, which is really, really shocking. And the system is just not well set up for people with multiple needs who need to get their physical health care needs met. As I mentioned, not very cheery this bit, it was quite hard to make it cheery, but there's high death rates amongst homeless people, particularly street homeless people. Something that a lot of our clients say is that, you know, primary care, they quite often will go and see a doctor, they don't want to know, or there's a lot of stigma, or they get treated really badly when they're sitting in the waiting room. It's really hard for clients to access the services they need when they need them. So what we've done, we have funded a couple of things. So one of them was a specialist tissue viability nurse. So basically, I don't know if any of you guys work in hostels, but if you do, you will have quite often worked with people with leg ulcers, quite often, but not always connected to substance use. And again, people with leg ulcers get treated really badly by the system. Most GP practices won't treat them. Clients very often have to wait until they get bad enough, so they end up in hospital. So we funded a specialist wound care nurse who'd go out and see people in hostels. She'd go out and chat to people on the street and really try and bring the wound care and the support to them. And then alongside that, we funded a nurse who would do outreach to the local hostels in Camden. And again, the evaluation we've done recently of one of our street outreach services say that for many of our clients, they're really frightened about accessing healthcare. Often they've lived with a lot of health issues for years. So it's really important they have someone they trust who can help them make that step into healthcare. So our nurse has seen over 30 clients with leg ulcers, some of whom had lived, one guy had lived with his leg ulcer for 19 years. About 3 others had lived with leg ulcers for about 10 years, and 80% of those are now engaged in treatment. And again, with the nurse outreach, we saw over 40 clients across the hostels and supported them to get the physical health care they needed. Having said all of that, all of this is lovely, but unless we change the systems, and unless we change how commissioning works, unless the commissioners fund like wound care, unless they fund outreach nurses, you know, we're just a drop in the ocean really. So there's still lots to be done, and we're doing lots more work on that. We go on to the next slide, Katie. And again, mental health. Everybody we work with has mental health issues, and they're usually rooted in like early life trauma, really difficult early lives. Most of our clients have been in and out of care, in and out of prison. Just being street homeless in and of itself is obviously very traumatic. And yet, without exception, not a single one of our clients, out of like 100 people we work with, there's been one, I think, who was offered specialist trauma therapy. So they just don't get the support they need. And again, the other thing, as I guess all of you will know, if one of our clients is using substances, they get told to go away and come back when they've addressed their substance use issues, whereas often the very reason they're using substances is to help them cope with their mental health issues. So it's completely and utterly bonkers. So we wanted to try and do something about this. So we have funded a dual diagnosis pilot. So it's a mental health practitioner who's working in our local hospital, UCLH, and is based in psychiatric liaison team, because we wanted to basically place ourselves on the inside of existing mental health services and try and influence from the inside. So our, and again, she's already made a lot of changes. So people coming into hospital who were usually on a script or using heroin would often walk out because they wouldn't get scripted in time. They wouldn't get seen. They'd have to wait for hours before they got any medication. So she's really influenced UCLH so that people get scripting more quickly. People in hospital did very little joint work with like housing or homelessness agencies. So again, she's really built those pathways there as well. And then the other really important thing we're doing is trying to make the case for our clients to receive therapeutic interventions. Because again, you know, our clients get told, go off, sort your substance use out, then come back very often. And it's really hard for them to get any kind of psychological support in the system as it is. So a lot of the work we're doing at the moment is with mental health commissioners, giving them the evidence base to change how they commission things so that there's mental health support built into the system. So we've had our own psychologist who, like quite a few of the psychologists across SHP, has been working, has shown it's absolutely very possible to work really effectively with our clients and to do really good therapeutic work with them. And we're also running a quite light touch psychological well-being group as well. And again, everything we do is kind of piloting what works and then using that to build the case to commissioners, say, look, we've done this, why don't you give it a go? Let's try it in different locations. And then we're also, over the next 18 months, going to be developing a large program of work looking at how to build the skills of the workforce to work with our client groups. So making sure that people are really trauma informed and really understand where our clients are coming from. And then just moving on, again, working with women. Our giant, lovely 97-page business plan didn't even mention women, which is pretty rubbish, to be honest. And yet when we started work, we realized that 9 out of 10 of the women we work with were in violent relationships or had been within the last year. And there was very little support available for them. I don't know if any of you guys have ever tried to find like a refuge bed for a woman who maybe uses drugs or is even just on like mental health medication, fleeing violence. It's a nightmare. It's virtually impossible. We had a woman who we took her to homeless persons unit because her perpetrator had fractured her eye socket and she was covered in blood, took her there. They're like, well, she's getting the support she needs on the street. We don't feel that she meets our criteria to be housed. So everything we're doing now is based on those early experiences of our client work. So in recognition of the problem of getting women experiencing domestic violence into housing, because very often they wouldn't want to go into a hostel where their perpetrators would be or friends of perpetrators, we piloted a Housing First project where we provided intensive support in partnership with with Solace, Domestic Violence Agency, to support women who were at risk, high risk of domestic violence, who'd been referred to MARAC, which is I'm sure you know, the multi-agency meeting for women who are at risk of homicide. We work with a small group of women who were at risk of death, had multiple and complex sort of needs. All of them had substance use issues, histories of homelessness, and we supported them into their own tenancies. And we ran that as a pilot for 18 months. All of the women engaged. It took a lot of work, took a lot of time, but with the right support, they were able to accept support and move into housing. All of them sustained it, and now Islington Council have funded that for the next 3 years. So that's just an example of where the frustrations we saw every day working with women, trying to get them housed, trying to get them the right sort of support, really resulted in tangible change. And similarly to that, we also, when we started, we had, to be honest, we had quite a lot of difficulty in working with local domestic violence services because they were saying to us, we're not going to come out and see those women on the street because the perpetrator might be there, or he might be around the corner, or it's really hard to have those conversations with the woman whilst he's there. Sometimes they wouldn't even phone the woman when she was street homeless in case the partner picked up the phone. And we realised that we really quickly had to find a different way of supporting these women so that women experiencing multiple disadvantage, who were street homeless, using substances, could still get intensive support. And we also realised that we were probably not always working in the safest possible way with these women. We needed to learn a lot as well. So out of that was born Wiser, which again is an intensive outreach service for women experiencing domestic violence, women who've been referred to MARAC, so at risk of homicide from their partners, but who are all street homeless or using substances. And again, that started off as just an idea we had. It was funded to work across Camden and Islington. It's a partnership between FLIC and SHP and women's services, so it's a huge partnership endeavour. And now it's working across 8 London boroughs, and it's really proved that with the right support, women can move forward with their lives. And it's also led to quite a lot of additional training as well. I'm aware I'm running out of time. This thing, FLIC's been running for like nearly 7 years, and it's like, I cannot condense it into 10 minutes. It's really hard. Again, working with perpetrators of domestic abuse. So when we started out, a lot of the women we supported were still in relationships or in quite controlling relationships with men. Quite often the perpetrator would be using the same substance use service as them, or would be in the same hostel or in a hostel down the road. And it was really difficult. Or one hostel would be supporting maybe the male perpetrator in a certain way. You know, we went to lots of case conferences where people would say things like, oh, it's 6 of one, half a dozen of the other. And we're like, we have to do something so that as frontline workers, we're better able to work both with the perpetrator and with the woman, and so that we're not colluding, we're not making things worse. But there was very little training or support out there for frontline workers. So we've done quite a lot of work on this, and we're just about to launch guidance and training for frontline workers working with perpetrators of domestic violence in like hostels or in homelessness settings, and that will be launched in November. And again, just very quickly, I mentioned Marek before. Again, Marek is a meeting. You only get referred there if you're at risk of being killed by your partner, basically. And we were going to Marek meetings for some of our female clients, and we would go, and there'd just be a lot of mythology. You get 10 minutes in a Marek to talk about someone who's at risk of death. There would be very few follow-up actions because people would be like, well, she's on the street, she's going to stay with him, what can we do? And it was just hopeless. So in order to try and tackle that, we've created the role of a multiple disadvantaged Marek rep. So someone from our team, Ray, who's in this call now, attends all the Marek meetings and is really the voice for people experiencing multiple disadvantage, and really sort of sticks up for their needs, and also can also help external agencies like hostels make better Marek referrals as well. And out of that came a whole program of training for the local police service, because again, police often had the first contact with our women, but often didn't do it very well, would barge in and make things worse at times. And just moving on, nearly finished. Second to last slide. Team Around Me is something else that we invented because we were just going to endless case conferences. And I guess you guys all do the same. You tend to have a case conference when something's gone really wrong, rather than when something's going right, or as the first thing that you do. And we go to endless case conferences where quite often people wouldn't take minutes, the client wouldn't be there. They might not have asked the client what they thought or what they wanted to see happen in that case conference. And they'd always focus on what had gone wrong and what wasn't working. So we just thought that wasn't good enough, and we really wanted to change it. So we've come up with something called Team Around Me, which is a case conference tool. It's been used in quite a lot of different locations now in Camden and Islington, which starts with asking the client, do you want to be at the case conference? Who would you like to lead it? Who do you want to be there? And at least, even if they're like, no, bugger off, I don't want anything to do with it, you've tried to engage with them and tried to ask them what they want. And also it focuses on what's working well and what the client's achieved, because too many of our referral forms and assessments tend to focus on what isn't working. So it's really strengths-based. And then the other thing it does is look at what's getting in the way. So again, if we have a case conference about someone who's in one of our hostels, maybe an elderly man who's still drinking loads, got physical health problems, but we can't keep him in the hostel because he needs proper specialised care, but there's none there. None of the care homes want to take him because of his drinking. That's not something we can address. It's a system issue that we really need to flag up to commissioners. So the other thing that Team Around Case Conference tool does is flag up all those issues that are getting in the way, so we don't have to keep having the same conference time and again. Again, all of these things, we're always happy to chat about them. So we'll just let us know if you want more information about those. So, and then the final slide, I think it's my final slide. Oh, and just very quickly, Housing First, again, I think we've kind of won this argument, but when we started out on Housing First, most of our clients are in hostel accommodation or had been evicted from hostel accommodation, and we wanted to test out and pilot House It first. This is like 6 years ago, where it wasn't all that popular. I think in Camden they only had 10 Housing First spaces. Now they have 72. In Islington there was no Housing First whatsoever until this last year, and now I think they're having up to 30 Housing First spaces. So we piloted Housing First, shout about it a lot, do lots of work with Homeless Link England, saying how brilliant it is. And out of that, we've seen locally and nationally Housing First really expand across the UK, which we're very excited about. And now, I promise, is the final slide, I think. Yeah. So just to sum up, what we're doing next, well, action experiments is something we will talk about in a moment in one of our other sessions. But action experiments, really stupid title, but basically we realised that so much of sort of influencing and system change is done at like manager level, commissioners. And if you're a frontline worker, often it feels like all you're doing is banging your head on doors sometimes. And it can be really frustrating. And we could see that our frontline team were also not feeling like they were making changes. They're doing the client work, but not making long-term change. So action experiments is basically something we've developed whereby about 30% of the time of our frontline workers is spent focusing on small local changes that they want to see based on the client work, and putting in place kind of influencing activity to try and change the system. And Tom, who's in this team, will talk about that later. Like I mentioned before, we're also going to be doing a lot of work around trauma and workforce development. So, you know, we don't have any more scenarios when, for example, our client will go for an assessment and be told, oh, right, okay, name, date of birth, oh, you've had 3 children removed, and then walk out of the room because the person doesn't understand the trauma that they've experienced. So we're going to spend the next 18 months focusing on developing trauma-informed best practice, Camden and Islington. And we're also going to be looking at co-production and comms, which again, slightly daft expressions, but basically we've done a lot of work with commissioners, and a lot of them are very well-meaning and lovely, and they say, oh, well, we always consult clients. What they tend to do is write service specifications for contracts or for new services, and then consult on them once they're written. And what we're saying is that we really need the client's voice in there from the beginning to do the planning, to do the development of how services are designed and delivered. And Bex in our team will be talking about that shortly. And then finally, we're also going to be rolling out a programme of learning and development. So we're appointing someone to lead on that, to take forward all our sort of training and all the things we've learned and all the ways of working, to really package that up into training and sort of learning that we can share across the sector. And what I would say is all of these things are all things we'd really love people across SHP to get involved in. So if you're interested in finding out about action experiments, or how you can influence from within your team, or getting involved in sort of developing work around trauma or co-production or training, delivering training, please let us know, because we really want as many people as possible to get involved. And I think that is it for me. So I'll hand you back over to Laura now.
Thank you so much, Alison.
You there, Laura?
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think that what is really brilliant about it is, like, it all just started with ideas in the beginning. You know, it started with our relationship with our clients as frontline workers, and hearing from them and seeing in their own experience, and also considering like our own experience as workers, like the things that just aren't working in the system, the things that are really frustrating. So I have a tally throughout this. I've made like the cheesiest PowerPoint ever, and this one's called Makes the Dream Work, Teamwork. This is just to kind of talk about our team. Like many people hear about FLIC and know about the frontline work that we do, but we have lots of different facets, and Alison's like summarized that really nicely, like the different kinds of things that are going on all the time. I've written here experts by experience, which obviously, like, our clients are experts. We have tried very hard to like recruit people who have lived experience as well. into our team, and we've got peer mentors who have lived experience, and many of them have gone on to work for either our team or other teams in SHP. So it's just like about actually recognizing what we have and the capital that we have as workers based on the experience that we have in the system, and not losing that. Because I think so often we will, you know, like when we're working on the front line, it can feel really easy to be pushed aside. Like we're not a statutory service, we're not a social worker. And so it seems like you can be talked down to a bit as support workers, and it's like, just don't believe it, don't let it happen, because what you have is excellent and is really useful. So what we want to like demonstrate today is like, in that experience, what you know, we can make changes in whatever way we can. And so hopefully you come away with a few ideas about that. But what we're going to go on to now is just to hear from one of our clients. This is, we're calling her Julie, but this is an excellent film. This isn't her, but an actor who is like really like, it's amazing how close to the person it is. So I hope that you enjoy the film, and we will talk about it afterwards. Thanks, Katie.
Okay, the sound should work, but please somebody shout if it doesn't.
My dad was very violent, abusive alcoholic, so we had a lot of upheaval. I used to pray, you know, to God to stop me dad hitting me mum. I walked in the kitchen once, my mum's feet was off the floor and he had her by the throat, her eyes bulging. That's probably where it comes from. I'm always waiting for something to happen. When my mum left me dad, she took us to live in Liverpool, and she left us in the care of them, mum and that animal, her father. I'd get on his lap and he'd put me on his groin, and it was horrible. So I'd get off and he'd put me back, and then he started touching me down below, and he had these long fingernails. He stunk of that fairy soap. I mean, mum was never really there because she was working and she had evening school. I just wanted a normal family life. There was this little girl on a Channel 4 show. She used to sit with a clown, and I used to wish that was me because she looked safe. She looked happy. The world could see her, they knew who she was. It's like an orphan. That's what I felt like. I started self-harming at 8 or so. I was sitting at the bus stop and I said, if this next bus is not a number 6, I'm going to cut myself. And there was this broken Coca-Cola bottle, and yeah. But no one noticed or said anything. I started drinking when I was 9. It took away all the anxiety of what I was facing at home. And we was back living with my dad, and he was abusing me. And I was bunking off school, doing gas, deodorant, Tipex thinner. I used to go around flats on motorbikes, like doing wheelies and that. Oh, I loved it. First got arrested when I was 11. I thought, what I've been through, getting arrested don't scare me. I'd be off me nut a lot, but it gave me confidence and didn't give a fuck what anyone thought of me. Really, I did, but I didn't. Do you know what I mean? I wanted to see how Jesus felt once, and I hammered a chisel through my foot. I didn't get right through to the bottom, though. And I'm saying all this, and I'm thinking it's fucking no wonder I'm fucked up. My first suicide attempt was 16. I found a load of medication in a cupboard and I ended up in hospital, stomach pumped, come to in intensive care, and no one was there. They drugged me up. I didn't know what day it was. I was just vegetated. I was in there, I don't know how long, a few months. I had jobs over the years. I worked for the Royal Mail, British Telecom, reconnecting phones. I was going to join the army, get away from it all. Thought I'm in a war zone anyway. This one time, so much had happened. I knew I was going to kill myself. I was driving round, plucking up the courage, put the music up, put my foot down. I was coming down Goswell Road, zooming. It was a nice motor. And I've gone down the bus lane, slammed into second gear, music pumping. Now, I was blessed because the traffic lights for that bus lane was green. Had they been red, I probably would have killed 15, 20 cyclists. I just shut my eyes and 72 miles an hour. Car hit them lights, tumbled over, people were running out the way. And the state of that car, you wouldn't believe someone got out of that alive. And I walked away with a scratch on my finger and I thought, I'm fucking still here. I lost my leg a while back because of medical negligence. I had double pneumonia and no one was listening to me. My mum overheard this doctor saying to a junior, local pisshead, probably got trapped wind under a rib cage. And I'm rolling around. I'll never forget that pain, excruciating here. And I was pleading, Mum, just get a gun, shoot me. They ended up having to take the leg off. What was happening to me? It's like I was put on this world to be abused. I got so much pent-up anger. And the police, the authorities, they need to hear this because they just view me as a fucking waste of space, just like my dad did. Do you know what I mean? People automatically judge me because I took drugs before, but I'm recovered now. I don't need to self-medicate. I still need the help of a couple of pills, like my hands, they're red raw, because my blood pressure's so high, because I get so anxious, and that's how I am on a daily basis. It's horrible. I got raped within the first 3 weeks of being in a relationship. She stabbed me and pushed me down the stairs, and Louise from FLIC, she was there for me. It might have been nothing to her, but it meant so much, you know. She's got empathy, understanding, and I don't feel like she's going to disappear, you know. I swear to God, if she wasn't in my life, I think I'd end it. She's my anchor. She's my lighthouse, she is. She brings me back to shore. She took my cat, my little boy, Prince, so I could go into rehab. I'd lost the will to live, and they'd been asking me for a long time, will you go into rehab? And I was like, I can't leave my boy. And I lived for him, and he lived for me, and he was my pal. He's seen me tasered by the police, he's seen me carted off, and Louise took him till he died and she got him cremated. I think it was really unprofessional. When Prince was ill, she phoned me up and said, you've got to ring the vets and tell them to put him to sleep, because I went off me nut. I've been angry with him here at times, but I've never known any member to ever retaliate with anger. All I've known all my life is when I open my mouth, it gets smacked shut. So when I do get something out to a worker, cringingly, I'm waiting for a bop, you know. I want to volunteer because I want to put something back. I was so proud teaching my niece her times tables because she was saying she felt embarrassed, and I thought, hold on, she needs me in her life. So things are going good. But when things are going good comes disaster, but I've got to get that out of my head, got to go with the flow. I don't know who I am. I'm telling you straight, I don't know who she is. I know she's a really nice person. She's kind, she's caring, considerate, but I think there's more to me. I really do. I'm not blowing my own trumpet. I've got a hidden gem somewhere and it needs to be found, and FLIC are helping me do that. But I know I've got to put the footwork in, in spite of one of them being metal. I feel like when I tell people I've been abused, it's like a platform for them to move in on me. I want to fly away. I feel dirty. I feel disgusting. I don't want to talk about it, but I know talking's therapy, and I just want to get it out there. That's why I want to write a book. It could be called Anger. I'm screaming out for help. I want anger management. Equilibrium, yeah, finding a balance. My life's been all or nothing. That could be the name of the book and all or nothing. I'm still here. After everything I've been through, it's unbelievable. That could be the name of my first book. F-dash in unbelievable. Because you could not make it up.
Oh, sorry, that was abrupt.
Yeah, thank you very much. What an amazing woman, an amazing story. And I think that can actually be so much more powerful than thinking about like statistics. I think you know, that works for some people. Like when we're trying to influence commissioners, obviously we need statistics, and like what Alison shared at the beginning is really excellent. You know, the outcomes that we've had, but sometimes just hearing from the person that impact that support in the right way and in the way that they want it can have on them. We have now like 3 slides kind of summarizing Julie's journey. And if you're just looking at this, I just wonder if you can think about where we've maybe had missed opportunities. She's like in her 40s now, and as you can see, like she started being abused at the age of 5. She had substance issues from the age of 7, self-harming from the age of 7. Like we have opportunities with the people that we have in front of us to respond to them in the way that they need to be responded to. If you could just skip to the next slide. Like throughout this journey, there's loads of times when she was referred to social services and declined any support, referred to substance use services, but fell off her treatment program, inpatient psychiatric treatment, and all of these opportunities that she could have received the support and be taken onto a different track. And the final slide, thank you. And unfortunately, like after years and years of going around and around the system of homelessness, of substance use, of suicide attempts and trauma in her life, she ended up losing her leg, which she alluded to in the story there. So it's just a real shame that the system was not set up to support her, that all of these different attempts to access the system, to get in through a door, it was just impossible. And she was just going around and around. And I'm sure like we've all continually having these kinds of experiences with various services that we're trying to get our clients in front of them and get people to give them the support that they need in the way that they want the support. So if you could go on to the next slide, thank you. So these are just kind of to demonstrate like different language that we need to use depending on who it is that we're talking to and who it is that we want to influence. Like having someone tell their story is super powerful. Thinking about all of the different steps in that journey is amazing. But then sometimes we do need to use numbers. And these are very often what has the power with when commissioners have not got very much money and they're needing to meet the needs of lots and lots of different people in our society. So in 1 year, this is what it was anticipated that Julie would cost the system, which is like a really harsh and abrupt way of putting it. And the next one, thank you, love. So yeah, in some situations, this is what you need to do to bang the drum that something needs to change. And like there was a question in the chat about Housing First. Like Housing First is a great money saving exercise. Like it's intensive support, and the workers should get paid more than a lot of frontline workers get paid and have a small caseload, so it does look expensive, but actually like having someone have stability and have a stable foundation on which to be able to recover will ultimately like save money, but also like save their life and give them so many more opportunities. Thank you. So we have, like I said, the frontline service in FLIC, but we've also got the agenda that at the end of this 8 years, like we're not gonna continue, like this is the year after next we finish. And what we want is to leave the system different in Camden and Islington so that clients actually can access the services they need without having to have like a support person as an expert to like navigate them through the system. Like it shouldn't really have to work like that. Someone should be able to maybe turn up to their GP or turn up to a library turn up to the mental health service and have a door open to them and be offered a service easily without having to jump through hoops. So in order to do that, we think in a systems thinking way. And just to kind of briefly summarize that, it's like acknowledging that the person who's in this slide in the center of this isn't the problem. You know, like very often, I'm sure you've heard it, we talk about, oh, this person doesn't engage, and if they engage or if they didn't use drugs, they wouldn't be having these problems. But they are a center of an enormous system which is doing to them very often like an injustice. So we've got, like, in the widest sphere, we've got like wealth redistribution, poverty, stigma, you know, like inequity and injustice. And then we've got like national policies, like, for example, our welfare policy. So we're all frustrated with the benefit system, but that is something that's very far away and very, very enormous to try to change. We've got local commissioning, and then like our local services, so us and other services that we're working with, and then obviously the person and their like intimate circle of friends and family. So yeah. And the next one, thanks a lot. So in order to do that, we use this kind of tool. It's like an action experiment tool, and it's to think about the barriers that we're facing. So in our work, like, a barrier might be that it's really impossible to get a client onto a script for whatever reason, like they're not able to make their appointment. So what might the aspiration be? What is it that's making it difficult for the person to access the service? How would we change that? What could we change? What information would we need? And then to like just try something different, change something, talk, like get a bit more information and see what happens. And a bit later on, Tom's going to talk about a really great action experiment that he did last year. But that is kind of the model that we use to be able to start those little changes that become massive changes, like what Alison was talking about earlier. So we're just going to go into breakout rooms now. And I think is it 3 breakout rooms?
Yeah.
Yeah. So nominate someone to feedback, because there'll be like a little time to feedback at the end. And then just think about what blocks you regularly come across with your clients, or that you as worker regularly come across when trying to advocate for your client. And for each block, like at what level or who in the system would you need to get in contact with or to chat with to get a change started? So I hope that makes sense. Hey. Is everyone back?
I think so.
Yeah, I think so.
I've been told I need to hurry up because I'm banging on too much. So if we just, thanks, Alison.
Sorry.
Harsh.
Kettle black, I think.
I know, right? The pot called a kettle black, is that the phrase?
Yeah, I know. I'm sorry.
So if we just like each feedback maybe 1 or 2, not each of us, like each room, feedback 1 or 2 blocks, and then like also who in the system we might need to be in touch with to change things. So who was in the first room and nominated the feedback?
Which was the first room?
Exactly.
Go on, any of the spokespeople.
I think, Tom, you were in room 1.
Oh.
Thank you for that. Doug, you were nominated. Doug, you...
Nobody wants to hear more from me. We had a couple of people who've only just started recently in our room, so it's still sort of getting into the process of client work and engagement and stuff. So we spoke a bit more generally about the sort of a lot of the blockages, as we're calling it, obstacles, being people falling between the gaps, so that between different partner agencies of people not necessarily taking the sort of lead responsibility for something, or so, which opened up a bit of a chat around the sort of team around me approach, being client-led, and a client maybe leading where a priority area is, or what they want to tackle first, or which partner agency they feel most comfortable starting the journey with, or and I suppose getting our focus as caseworkers or workers being led, and that becoming where we sort of start to drive our sort of our core work or action experiments in the direction that's led by the client base, you know. So if somebody isn't ready to tackle the substance use yet, we don't just put that at the front of the queue and start, you know, hammering away with a substance use agency because somebody's still living on the street and they need to be in a secure house before they even start thinking about it, or have a medical issue dealt with, or go and get belongings picked up from somewhere, or, you know, whatever it is, or some key statutory appointments they can't, you know, we have to get them to, otherwise they're going to go back to prison. So, you know, what we can build in terms of priorities, where rather than see it as all this stuff that needs sorting out from probably sometimes 5, 6, 7, 8 different partner agencies, how can we take a sort of priority focus that's client-led in terms of what are the key building blocks or obstacles they need to remove themselves first to be able to even think about the other stuff. And then we spoke, Ray spoke really well about the sort of what is always behind this, I suppose, in terms of when we start removing obstacles or start asking people to look at certain unhelpful behaviors or self-medication, things they've done, the complex trauma that sits behind that, and being aware, I suppose, of what we're going to need to do to hold it, help it, have it there to make sure that we're not re-traumatizing people through how we're charging in to try and cracking on and getting things done or meeting outcomes. And we said that, I think we all agreed, that measurement of success in terms of, which sometimes takes an enormous amount of hard work to hold a client in a space where they have a little bit of emotional breathing space and mental ability to sort of perceive and think about their life and where they're at in a slightly more helpful way, maybe, or in a way that they haven't been able to before. And we sort of spoke about the video that we watched in terms of, you know, the lady who's all or nothing, 100 miles an hour for years and years and years and years. And it sounds like finding a little bit of space where there's just, you know, a few basic things happen and it's still hard and difficult, but there's clearly some sort of emotional, mental breathing space that's been created for that person to reflect and see how they've been living their life differently for the first time in quite a long time, by the sound of it, and how important and significant just getting to that point of change for somebody is, I suppose. Was that about it, folks?
That sounds
Really
like a great
smashed it, Doug.
Yeah, great summary.
That was very fulsome. Thank you.
I felt like I was there. It was wonderful. Who was in room 2, and have you got another block or barrier other than
Alison? You were in room 2. That's your room.
Shamara's doing the chatting for us because everyone's heard more
Shamara
from me.
Yes.
Give
Can you
me a
hear me? My
block.
signal's going a bit funny.
You're perfect.
We can hear you.
Okay, lovely. So we said that the blocks were around, so if I start off with COVID, we said COVID, so obviously there's a block at the moment towards kind of engagement.
Robot.
Engagement with certain groups. Oh, is it going funny?
Oh no, it's okay again. This is going to be fun.
Oh,
You're
no.
good.
So yeah, that's one thing that we said. And then we said stigmatization and accessing services, and kind of like a general lack of awareness from stakeholders about our client experiences is one barrier that they have to kind of accessing services as well.
Yeah.
Then based on kind of the thing on the PowerPoint, I was saying that influencing on a commissioning level was what we thought would kind of be a good idea, because everything kind of filters down from how things are commissioned. And if there's a lack of services or services aren't appropriately fitting the need of the local authority, then people just end up bunged in services locally. So we were kind of saying from our experience in hostels, sometimes people that are just the most complex end up lumped in there rather than being in something more appropriate like housing first or a more intensive service. And we were kind of saying flexibility of services is important as well, and kind of mutual respect of professionals, because a lot of us have experienced, like when you go to case conferences and things like that, because you're the support worker, either the medical professionals or somewhere else doesn't really take into account what you're saying, because you're not seem to be on the same level as them, when in fact you see this person on a day-to-day basis and essentially are living through whatever they're going through with them. So
Yeah.
we said mutual respect is a good thing, and then that tied into kind of workforce development and possible like internal barriers as well as what we were saying, kind of things that internally we might need to work on, so like working on the client voice, co-production work, and then workforce development, so actually teaching people how to work with people.
Yeah,
That's what we said.
that's great. Thank you so much. And you stopped being a robot, which was great.
Oh, that's
too.
great.
Thank you. And you'll probably be pleased to hear this, but group 3, if you could just give me one really quick block that you came up with. Whoever was in room 3.
Bex, is that us? I think it's us.
Yeah, it's us.
Okay, so yeah, we talked about being disconnected systematically across the different support services within the homelessness. We spoke about how difficult it might be sometimes to get information from GP or from the council, or get forms on time, prioritizing things that are quite formal and systematic over support that's more face-to-face. Maybe what else did we spoke about? Trying to get information, from the council to advise the client can be quite difficult. We spoke about a system that does not really connect us, and gatekeeping. We said that the first thing we can do is to go to client to make them understand that they need to be resilient. So building up resilience within the client and within us, to keep on pushing, and like Doug said, to remove the obstacles that
is such a good point as well. Yeah. If we don't have that kind of strength inside us, and also like encourage that in our clients, it's so demoralizing. So thank you. Yeah.
The second thing we can do is to discuss the cases we've had. So I think, someone mentioned heads of housing departments, care coordinators, care, and kind of create like a group, maybe a movement that goes more towards homelessness having a greater power in the decision making sector itself.
Yeah, rather than being an afterthought. Thank you.
Perfect. Thank you, Victoria.
The slides, please, Katie. Thank you. So yeah, just like to summarize from that then, like it's really good to think about who it is that we'd need to target, like where our power lies, like rather than thinking I'm going to change the welfare system and I'm going to just talk to the head of welfare and they're going to change everything. Like obviously we need to be realistic about what influence that we do have. And like I said earlier as well, like considering what their currency or their language is, the person that we're communicating with. Is it numbers? Is it something really qualitative, like a person's story? And what methods of influence do we use? Like there's no point in remaking, what's the word? Remaking the wheel? That's not the word. But yeah, if there's already like passionate people in a group, maybe we can just like jump on the back of that and start something together, join with other agencies like Shelter, who have a really big voice, like just maybe feeding into something that is already there. Someone already mentioned this, which was brilliant, and it's like, what blocks do we have? We're not perfect as a service and as an organization either. So consider if we are putting up barriers to clients to access what they need from us, and always like involving experts by experience. And so with that, I'm going to hand over to Bex, who's going to talk for 10 minutes. We have to be 10 minutes.
No worries, I'll try. Thank you.
Thank you, Bex.
Yeah, so I'm going to start talking about co-production and how we make sure that lived experience shapes all of our systems change, work and planning at FLIC. If you go on the next slide, Katie. Thank you. So some of us might have heard of co-production before. Some of us, previous slide, sorry. Thanks. Sorry. So some of us might have heard of it as a buzzword. Some of us might be doing it every day in our day-to-day work, or trying to do this in our services. And we don't have time to go through the many different approaches and definitions of co-production, but there are some quotes here that I think are really nice to remind us why co-production and involving lived experience in systems change work is really important. So the first quote in the left-hand side, co-production should basically be about making sure the solutions to complex problems come from the people who experience those problems themselves. And in practice, it involves people who use services being included and working together from the start to the end of any project that affects them. And finally, it is about sharing power between decision makers and people who use services as well. Next slide. So yeah, there are some things that co-production isn't. People just telling their stories. So stories are incredibly powerful, like we saw the story about Julie earlier, and these share voices and experience that aren't usually heard. But with co-production, it's important to think about how people can be meaningfully involved in decision making as well. So how people can use their expertise of navigating the system to make change, and not just telling stories over and over again. And the same with being involved or consulted or providing feedback. People need to be involved at an equal level. And finally, it's not just one person's responsibility. So how can you make sure that everybody in your team, your management, maybe the people who fund your services are on board with this different way of working? And next slide. So what can it be? Next slide. Sorry, next slide, Kay. Thank you. Okay, so there is a really useful tool called the Ornstein's Ladder of Participation, which some people may have seen or used before, but it's fairly widely used when thinking about how to work alongside people that we support or people with lived experience. So at the very bottom of the ladder, there's a kind of participation where we just do two people. So it's more about educating and dictating an approach to change and making decisions on behalf of other people. Moving up the ladder, so the three middle points, so around engagement, involving people, consulting people, is more about doing for. It's a good start and it's a first step to working with people with lived experience, but it shouldn't be the end point. You might run a focus group, ask for feedback, or consult a group of people in your service about what they think, but ultimately decisions are made separately, and lived experience only informs a decision rather than is seen as like an equal part of the process. So it could be seen as tokenistic. But moving up the ladder, we get to co-production and co-design. So this is kind of the holy grail of participation. So it's where power is kind of shared, responsibility is shared, and all expertise is valued on the same level. So there might be expertise around how services are designed, but then there might be expertise about experience in those services, and that should all be valued on the same level and work together on the same level as well to solve problems. Okay, so how do we actually put all of this knowledge about co-production into practice? The ladder of participation is really useful, but we might come up against a lot of challenges or obstacles to actually working co-productively every day or in our services, or even to make change. So we've developed some questions at FLIC that are kind of embedded in our systems change planning to ensure that when staff are thinking about what systems change they want to do, that working alongside lived experience is embedded at the very beginning of all of that planning. So these are really helpful questions to just think about how to do this kind of work. So firstly, it's important to think about what expertise is missing from understanding that systems barrier or problem. So think about what you don't know, or what assumptions you're making about what change is needed, or what assumptions you've made about the experience of the system without actually talking to people who are experiencing that systems themselves. And who do you need to involve, who do you need to bring together and speak to each other in order to make change? And then the next slide, how will you actually share power? So how will you be able to involve and work alongside people with lived experience, and what different roles and tasks will people have on the project? So you might have people who are part of a focus group, there might even be paid roles, you might have a peer mentor program. Some people might prefer writing or speaking in meetings, but there should be lots of different ways that people can be part of decision making, be part of your day-to-day work in ways that suit their skills and expertise. And then finally, what resources do you actually need to be able to do this work before you can get started? What people do you need to get on board? Who do you need to speak to? And what training or support is needed to actually enable people with lived experience to be able to work on systems change and what knowledge do they need about the language used within the system and the language used by commissioners, that may be difficult for them to sort of want to get involved or be meaningfully involved in systems change as well. So that's everything from co-production. Now over to Tom.
Hi, that's me. Thanks for the picture. Okay, I'm going to talk to you about an action experiment I did a year ago. The topic we tried to target was the drug provision in Camden. For the last few years in Camden, we've got two teams. So we have a team that addresses their cohort who they deem to be complex. So by complex, we're talking street homeless, growing, injecting, and also dual diagnosis. And the other team addresses or tries to work with people who aren't too complex. So people may be on cocaine hydrochloride, or they could be on a script, but they're not drinking on top. So the problem in having two teams is that if you go to the complex team, then you can't access the groups or the help in the other team. And the other team had a few things like the recovery cafe, a drama group, and an art group, which are fantastic kind of resources for people to have. But however, the cohort of clients who come to us weren't actually able to access it because they were put into a category of being too chaotic. So we felt this was unfair to our clients. And the understanding that we have is that the greater the choice of kind of activities and the interventions open to a person, the greater the chance that they will turn up to the service and to come through with kind of the outcomes that they want to get. So our reflections, our aspirations, first of all, my own little like analog kind of slide, aspirations was kind of to bring the two teams together so that if you're a client in Camden, you've got a choice to go to any team and to be part of any group, any activity that you think could help you on your journey to recovery. So to get this kicked off, all we had to do is slide 2, reflections. Who do we need to call and what questions do we have to ask everyone? So to us, it was quite clear. It was 3 groups of people. Number 1, the people who turn up to the services, the people that are after the help and the interventions. And we talked to them about what they enjoyed about the team that they were a part of, and if they thought it was quite helpful to have 2 tiers, or if it would be good to have just like a team that is integrated and treats everyone equally, which I believe that would have been the case. But the clients were on board, which was good. So the next part of our plan was to speak to teams. So myself and a colleague, we went out to 3 teams in Camden and we talked to people who were currently actually in the team employed there and asked them what problems, concerns they could have if it was an integrated team, and if they think it has to be a tier 2 kind of a delivery as it currently is. It became quite clear that people would be happier to work together because, you know, the greater the people in a community, the greater kind of access to group work, referrals, resources, art, drama, all these really fantastic and important elements in recovery. So everyone was kind of on board, but it comes down to commissioners because we've got 2 teams that are commissioned and they have their kind of own targets. And as long as that's kind of the case, it's very hard like for 2 teams to work together when you both have like your same kind of targets. So we had an idea of who we had to talk to. My next slides. Planning and actions, okay? So we got together a group of clients who attended the 2 teams, and we talked about pros and cons, and if it's challenging to have groups with people who could present quite chaotic, in groups with people who maybe just having a drink or two too many, would that cause a problem in groups? Came across that actually, on the whole, clients were quite happy to have a broad group of people in a group to work together, and it really helped to build a community. So from the client perspective, it was cool. Let's go ahead to do this. The pros were also quite keen, but there were a few training issues and targets in particular that they were a bit kind of anxious about. If we're trying to include everyone, are we able to hit our targets? So the third point of our action was to get in touch with the commissioners in Camden. Now, the really cool thing is that in April 21, there's going to be a new team coming out in Camden. And so the commissioners are already quite keen to see if they could streamline everything or try to capture everyone in Camden to get a greater understanding of treatment happening in Camden, how many people are due to come in and how many people do recover. So talking to commissioners, we were part of the procurement process, which went on for half a year. We caught up every few weeks, and it was the clients of the 2 teams, it was people employed in the 2 teams, it was us, and it was our cohort as well, which I was quite keen to take along. Quite often our cohort don't have the confidence or communication skills to communicate to commissioners or express themselves too freely. So it's quite important to us to take them along to be a part of that process. Another part of our kind of actions was we managed to track down a team in, it's called Connections. It's out of Camden. And Connections do everything. They do outreach, they do treatment to people that are actually on the street. If you're homeless, then you can turn up to Connections. They'll try to put you into hostels, into housing. If you're on a script, they'll try to keep you on a script. If you aren't on a script, then they'll keep it as easy as they can to put that person onto a script. So we spent a few days over there also, collected everything that they told us, kind of the pros and cons, because it's quite tempting to go in and be like, come on, commissioners, this is going to be awesome. But you've got to be open and honest and be like, these are the challenges and this is like how we overcome them. The procurement process went on for a few months. It was put on hold because of COVID. But the commissioners have ended up coming up with 3 options of treatment provision due to come out in April 21. And thanks in huge part to the client participation, the colleagues in other teams and ourselves, the commissioners have come to the conclusion that as from, I'm hoping April 21, again, depending on all that happens the next few months, there is to be a team across through the area that will take on everyone if you are deemed too complex, as in you are injecting in the groin or street homeless, or you could just be at home having like a few drinks. And so the outcome is that like hopefully by April 21, we will now have like a service that is open to everyone in Camden, which means that like all the clients would have access to all the treatment options that are in Camden. And I do believe the greater the choice of treatment, the greater the chance of people actually coming into services and to engage and to get outcome. Now, the important part after this is co-production and to really keep a tap on how improvements are happening and if this is coming through as we are all hoping it to do so. So as from April, the new team will be out and we will be talking to the people who come to our team, FLIC, to SHP, to hostels and to the drug teams as well, kind of like keep a tab on things and to keep communication open to the teams, to the commissioners and to clients to make sure that we're all in like alignment. I found in the last few years in Camden that everyone is really keen to work as a team together, but as long as we all have like our individual kind of targets, it's very hard to keep people all together. So I'm really quite hopeful. It's not all completed at this point, but we're coming to a point that it will be everyone as a team to work together, which I think would have a huge kind of impact and help for the clients that we have in Camden. So that was an example of the action experiment I did last year.
Thanks so much.
Any
Tom.
questions about it? I'm happy to take. Or
I'm just going to quickly kind of summarize, and then we might have a couple of minutes for questions. And if not, you can email me, Tom, Bex, Katie, Alison. Just be in touch with us. But basically, I hope that today has been useful, that maybe it's given some ideas or some inspiration, that like you have a lot of knowledge and experience, and like use the power that you have to make the changes that we all want to see for our clients and for us as workers. I would love to set up some kind of like forum in SHP for like particularly passionate people who like really like got behind the idea of system change or want to like maybe implement that in your own services. So yeah, please let me know. Yes, I will put my email address here. But yeah, if you would love to be part of that, I would love to have you. And also if any of the stuff we've talked about in particular is of interest to you, like the trauma-informed stuff, housing first, working with perpetrators, any of that, or if you have clients who are particularly passionate about that stuff and would like to get involved, like just let us know. And thank you so much for spending the last hour and a half with us. Yeah, I'll let everyone go if you want to, but if you want to stay behind and chat, then the room's still here. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Tom, can I just get a copy of your slides, Tom, if that's okay?
I got plenty more from this come from. I'm quite like an analog kind of guy, Doug, to be honest. But yeah, there we are.
Lovely.
I'll bring him around later.
Lovely. Take care, everybody.
Cheers, everyone.
Bye. Bye.
Bye, everyone.
Bye. Thank you.
Did Tom leave?
Yeah, how rude.
He was just like, drop the mic, I'm out.
Tom's gone, man.
Do you have any questions? Anyone who's still here?
Yeah, I was just wondering, because I haven't really heard much about FLIC before. This is actually the first time I kind of like can put faces to people that are standing behind it. And could you just briefly tell me what FLIC is? Like, I know what they are, but what do you do?
So we have like a frontline service where we have 8 workers who work with 6 clients each.
Mm-hmm.
Sorry, your face just moved on my screen. I was like, did you just ask the question and leave? So yeah, we have those. We work with 6 people each. So like across our service, we're working, I think at the moment, with what, 43 clients. And all of them have very complex needs. That's what it was termed at the beginning. And also all of those workers, Ray, you're not on mute. All of those workers have an aspect of their role, like 30%, which is doing those kinds of action experiments and trying to influence the system to better the outcomes for our clients.
Right.
Then we also have, like, say you heard from Bex, so someone who leads on co-production. We've got Katie who leads on comms. We had a psychologist who used to do like lots of psychiatric assessments for people who just like the mental health service wouldn't touch because they're like using a substance or something. So just kind of like trying different things and proving that it is actually possible to work with people who might still be using, who might be homeless, who might have like active psychosis, you know.
Yeah,
so that is the idea behind it.
Thanks.
No worries. Does anyone else have any questions? Bola, I'm loving the angles. Just like.
Anyway, it is well understood and straightforward. The only questions I would have loved to ask, because you know, the second to the last speaker, she said that what kind of training do you have for incoming, like a new person, so that they
struggling to hear you. Sorry, I'm going to come close to my speaker.
Okay, let me remove it from.
Oh, that's better. Yeah.
Let me just. I hope I will be. Hello, can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
The second to the last speaker, she said that what kind of training do you have for the new people? Like if I come to any of the projects today, what kind of training do you have for them? Because mostly they will just come as agency and they won't be able to do any work. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So like what kind of training would we do for people like who are in projects maybe?
Yeah. Like a new person, but mostly you just find out they can't do anything when they come. So what kind of,
that's actually a really great question. And it's not, because we, like everyone who starts at SHP, and I think including like locum staff, there's a kind of induction training package, but we don't actually have a part of it. So maybe like that would be something that I could have a chat with like the learning and development team. If you think that might be something that like lots of people are interested in when they start at SHP, just to know that like, you know, say Shelter, Crisis, these kinds of homeless charities, you know that they do a lot of influencing work, but with SHP, like we do great work with clients, but we don't really know about all of this other stuff that we're doing. So yeah, I think that would be a great thing to have as part of an induction. And this group that I want to start, where we're like talking with project workers and people of all levels in SHP to make sure that we keep this on the, we keep it on the agenda and we keep discussing it. I think that it would be good to come from that as well. Thank you.
Yeah.
Does anyone else have any questions?